So far under Mike Rhoades, Penn State basketball doesn't have any weaknesses, but they're going to have to work pretty hard to figure out what their strengths are going to be.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and Mike Rhoades laid it all out. The Nittany Lions have a plan moving forward for Penn State men's basketball. We're going to talk about that in today's episode. Plus, just takeaways ultimately from what was seen at the media availability on Tuesday, July 11th. The players had a good practice that we were able to see, to spectate some 3-on-3 drills, getting to see what they want to do defensively and what they're really emphasizing. Good look at what Coach Rhoades is as that coach, as that head coach for Penn State. And it's all going to be laid out in this episode. Final segment, we're going to talk to Zane Bransfield, who's been helping me out with the show and gathering some content. He's going to help us figure out how good this Penn State men's basketball team can be for 2023-2024. But Mike Rhoades' grand plan in all of it, this is going to take step by step, right? This is a 7-year plan for Mike Rhoades and company. Pat Kraft committing to Coach Rhoades for 7 years, $26 million. And what is the plan? What is this team shaping up to be? Well, simply, and this is part of the takeaways as well, but I think it's important to start with the groundwork, the foundation of what Mike Rhoades wants to do. And that is to build a diverse team. And when I say that, you look at this group so far, and it's important to understand that this team does not have any weaknesses. I'll say it again. This team does not have any weaknesses. But at the same time, what are their biggest strengths, right? Those weaknesses, that's good, but are they just okay at everything? What are they ultimately going to stand out in? But let's analyze that for a second. This team can go fast, which is what I think they're going to do. You don't bring in someone like Joe Crispin unless you're going to play a fast style of basketball. Joe Crispin doing that a lot at his previous institution, coming over from Division III, but now back at Penn State, his alma mater, one of the best Penn State basketball players of all time, one of the best pure scorers. So he knows how to score the basketball. He understands the current trajectory of the sport. And that's good, because Mike Rhoades admitting that, hey, he and Joe see the game the same way, then that means that Penn State isn't going to play this slow, monotonous type of control basketball. Let's see who can get to 60 first. No, Penn State's going to push the pace. They're going to try to score 80. They're going to try to score 90 on a given night. And that's interesting, because Mike Rhoades' system at VCU work differently for VCU. This is a team that can play fast, but because of those elements that Coach Rhoades is used to, he's done this. He's played slow-paced basketball. That can also go with this team, and you have the players to do it. You have the transfers over from VCU. You had players from last year's team like Kanye Clary and Jameel Brown and Demetrius Lilley that were in that system with Micah Shrewsbury. They tried to score as much as they could. That was a high-powered offense. However, they were very conscious of what they were doing with the basketball. So this team has elements that can run up and down the floor. Kanye Clary is the fastest player in the Big Ten. I don't need to sit back and say, you see it for yourself. It's on the broadcast. So Penn State can run up and down the floor, or they can bore you to tears and play control with the basketball and get the most out of it that way by playing clean. Shooting threes. This is a team that had question marks about, hey, is it going to shoot from behind the arc well? And so far from what we've seen, I know it's summer. The pressure's not really on. Players aren't really having that much adversity. I mean, that's what Coach Rhoades said, right? They haven't had that much adversity. However, this is a team that does have the dynamic of being able to shoot at all spots of the floor. You're able to have players that drive the floor as well. Let's take a transfer in RayQuawndis Mitchell. He's somebody that can shoot the three, someone that can drive in. The same can be said for Ace Baldwin. The same can be said for Kanye Clary. Then you have more of your nuanced three-point shooters. Zach Hicks coming over from Temple. And then you're trying to get Nick Kern into the fold. Puff Johnson's a really good three-point shooter. So this is a team that is able to shoot the basketball, just a matter of how well. It's not a weakness. Height and size, Penn State's biggest problem for the past couple of seasons. No disrespect to John Harra. He was a big presence in the middle, but it felt like at times he was the only one 2 years ago. And then last year, Penn State having Miles Dredd to play the 5. that wasn't going to cut it. Someone who was 6'4", a big body, big physically, but not really that top. Now you have Favour Aire. Now you have Qudus Wahab coming in. Those are big bodies, 6'10" plus. Finally, Penn State has some size. It is no longer a weakness, but how is Penn State going to be able to use those big bodies against fellow players like Zach Edey in the Big Ten? We'll see if they can actually go toe-to-toe to them, but size is no longer a weakness. You don't have to worry about getting out-rebounded if you're Penn State. And then that goes back to the agility and the speed. You have that, you can run up and down the floor. So this is the same as playing fast versus playing slow. But for Penn State, with the likes of Kanye Clary, Ace Baldwin, a very, very dynamic, deep backcourt, Penn State has the speed to really blow past teams. So that's part of it. You are building a team that is dynamic in so many ways and doesn't have any weaknesses. You're also building a team. This is part of Mike Rhoades' plan. Number 2, build a team that has all levels of experience. You have your one-and-done seniors, some of the guys that transferred in, Qudus Wahab, RayQuawndis Mitchell. You have the transfers who are eligible for one more season, will be here to really establish the foundation. How about Ace Baldwin Jr., who can be the face of your program? And then someone like Nick Kern coming over from VCU. You also have high potential underclassmen. Favour Aire, once upon a time, I know it didn't work out with the Miami Hurricanes, but this is somebody, all the potential in the world. He was a former top 75 Rivals basketball commit when he went to the Hurricanes. This is someone who can turn out to be the future face of your team and someone that you can build around. He still needs some time to season. I'm excited to see what his potential is, but yes, that is somebody who is a long-term player, but you have the short-term that can get you to where you need to go in 2023 and 2024. And then you have freshmen. So this is a group, okay, Bragi Goodmanson coming over from Iceland, playing pro basketball in Iceland. However, there's not a lot of freshmen on this team. That's the Mike Rhoades coming in after the recruiting cycle, in the middle of it, but on the later side of it, you're getting your verbal commits later on. But the time that Mike Rhoades didn't really have that chance to recruit true freshmen out of high school, that's going to be the plan for the class of 2024, 2025, and of course beyond. But this is the transfer portal helps this. There's no gap with what Mike Rhoades is inheriting to where he can win now. I like the fact that part of this program rebuild is finding players that are selfless. That is key. But in this day and age of NIL, where it's what kind of check can I get? How much money can I get? And I like that Coach Rhoades emphasized that Penn State is not after players that say, well, what kind of money can you get me? It is important for Penn State to continue to find those players that are going to go out of their way for the team, for their teammates, the coaches. Penn State, the identity, that is their identity. It's not about, well, what kind of check can I cash from NIL? That's a part of it, and why it's one of the next parts of the foundation of this program. NIL for Penn State men's basketball became very important under Pat Kraft. This is for the fact that Pat Kraft comes in right away, already is able to help James Franklin build up NIL for the football team, but then to turn around for men's basketball immediately and get the right resources allocated for this team. That's important as well. So NIL isn't an afterthought anymore. That is why Penn State was able to go up against the likes of Florida in the transfer portal, other schools in the Big Ten to compete and remain competitive in that atmosphere. I'm sorry, I'm not to say that people like Ace Baldwin or Nick Kern, Zach Hicks, anybody that transferred in, and keep the players around that were still here. Kanye Clary, he could do what's best for him and be able to go get that additional money, those sponsorships with a good NIL program. Penn State has become respectable in that place, and they're going to continue to build it. It's something that is important, but it is not the first and determining factor when it comes to recruiting players and getting them to be involved at Penn State. That's the important part of it, but NIL is certainly not last on anyone's mind here as well. And the long-term trust. Okay, this is a 7-year contract, like I mentioned, $26 million. The fact that Penn State and Pat Kraft did make this public, they made this available to the public, the information, that is saying something. That is saying we have an agreement that we are going to stand by. This isn't, well, after year 2, Mike, you haven't really succeeded or you're not living up to our standards. Rome wasn't built in one day, and that is what Penn State is going to progressively work on over the course once it's all said and done here. 7 years is a long time, I know, and everyone's thinking about the immediate, but for Coach Rhoades and this program and Pat Kraft, I like that there is stability That is the most important part of this. This program has stability for the long term. And I really don't think there are any question marks. I don't think this is a destination job for Mike Rhoades. I don't think he's going to be looking elsewhere, and fans can feel secure in that as well. Locked on Nittany Lions, we're going to talk about the takeaways specifically about this team, but just laying out the groundwork of what Penn State can do and what they plan to do under Mike Rhoades and this new direction. It is very exciting. Now let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times the first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. How about that? $200. All you got to do is bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from the money line to the over under and who you think is going to hit a home run, all on an app that is safe, secure, super easy to use. And plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Locked on Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. All you got to do is check out HappyValleyInsider.com for all the latest on Penn State athletics, of course, particularly football, basketball, the recruiting for the football team. It has been quite the summer for the Nittany Lions, and the season is not too far away for the football team. Now, the takeaways for Penn State men's basketball is seeing them in a brief bit of practice, about over 45 minutes, a good chance to see the team fully in action. But also get to hear from the players and the coaches. Let's start with this, and part of this master plan that Coach Rhoades and Pat Kraft are putting together. Mike Rhoades is the right coach for this program. I think that's takeaway number one, is this is someone who views Penn State as the final destination. They're not going to look elsewhere. And it's no shade at Micah Shrewsbury, but Micah Shrewsbury did not view Penn State as that dream job. He didn't. He's from Indiana, and that was a different athletic director that hired him, and Sandy Barber. Mike Rhoades is the right person. I like the way he coaches. He's not afraid to guide his players, to lead his players with the right amount of intensity. When I was seeing him coach up players, it wasn't over the top, but it also wasn't anything that was laid back. He was firm. He was direct. I like the way that he coaches the team. That's just my personal opinion. This program, the second takeaway, is built for long-term success. They're built for long-term success. We laid it out in the master plan, right? That they're going to have the one and done senior veterans that are coming in, and they're going to set the tone. They're going to help build the foundation. Then you have that next group of veterans to carry the torch, the Ace Baldwins, the Nick Kerns. And then you move back a little bit and you have your sophomore class now, Kanye Clary. There's this, it's not overly dominant in one age group. Like Penn State men's basketball from a season ago, losing Jalen Pickett, losing Andrew Funk, Seth Lundy. This was a very senior-laden team. Miles Dredd, just to name those few guys. And now you look at it, there is going to be groups that are on the way out, but it's not going to be all at once. And there's not a group that's all the way behind. It's not overly freshmen, and it's not overly seniors as well. This team can win now. Let's take away number 3. This team can win now. And I don't mean a national championship. That's not what I'm trying to get at. This is a team that can be competitive. This is a team that can win in the Big Ten. They're going to win games that they necessarily aren't going to be expected to win. And that's okay. And there's going to be teams that are going to look past them, and they're going to get bitten because of it. So I'm excited to see what the Nittany Lions can do with a Big Ten schedule that is going to be tough. This is one of the better basketball conferences in all of the Power 5. You can even include the Power 6, right? This is college men's basketball. We saw UConn win a national championship. But for Penn State, a team that I don't think is going to finish in last, I think just like Micah Shrewsbury's team, they finished in the top 10 of the Big Ten. And that's all you need to do to make the NCAA tournament. So that is a solid goal for this Nittany Lion team for 2023-2024. They can win now. Do not think that they are a bottom of the barrel team. They are not coming in last in the Big Ten. I can safely say that. We'll go back to what I started off this podcast with. This team has no weaknesses. They don't have any weaknesses. They can shoot. They can rebound. They can play fast. They can play slow. They have size. They're not going to get bullied in any particular category. But what are the strengths? I sit back and I look at this team. What are the strengths? They're okay at shooting. They have some height now, but it's not going to be the best in the Big Ten. Are they going to play so fast to a point that it's too good for them? Because when you do play fast, you can't have Qudus Wahab on the floor. You can't have Favour Aire. Can you have Demetrius Lilley? Probably not. And what's that going to do? We saw Penn State go really small with its lineups a season ago. Is that going to work again under a new coach? Time will tell, but this team has no weaknesses, but it's important to figure out what their strengths are going to be. Is it going to be the speed? Is it going to be the size? Part of that is identity. So right now, the identity is they have a lot of good things they could cling on to, but you can't be searching around for all these different things, because if you focus on too many different things, you're not going to be good at one thing, period. You're not going to be a great. You can be okay at a bunch of things, but you're never going to be great at one thing. And we'll see if that pays dividends for them. Ace Baldwin is the most exciting player on this team. I mean, that's safe to say. That's everybody. That's why all the schools were targeting him in the transfer portal. That is why Mike Rhoades had him as the primary target to come to Penn State. He is the face of a program. To go from the best player in A10 basketball to now the Big Ten, that is almost a lateral move. The A10 is very respectable. Yes, the Big Ten is better. Power 6, I get it. But you're getting the MVP of that conference, which is competitive. Sent some schools to the NCAA tournament a year ago. Always has teams that are that can make the tournament, that have tournament potential, to say the least. This is a guy that I'm very excited to watch in action when the games roll around, but in practice, just seeing him, this personality, his drive, the way that he commands a court is pretty impressive. And I'm glad that he is going to be around for 2 seasons for Penn State. Puff Johnson, I think, is going to be the biggest X factor. This is someone that, like Favour Aire, have brought him up a lot. Puff Johnson, related to Cam Johnson in the NBA, strong basketball background, coming from a winning program, winning roots of UNC, back to the home state of Pennsylvania. Puff Johnson, if he can finally hone it all in, because he wasn't averaging that much, under 10 points a game, not really. He had some breakout games, had a good strong game in the national championship when North Carolina was in that situation, but never really established himself as that difference maker for the Tar Heels. If he can become that difference maker for Penn State alongside Ace Baldwin, that is going to be good news for the Nittany Lions, of course. But Puff Johnson, your biggest X factor on this team. Penn State becomes so much better with him. Because of him, they can also be limited if he doesn't take that next step in this senior season. Shooting is ahead of schedule. Right? This was something that Mike Rhoades actually addressed in the press conference. He said that Penn State, he didn't know if this team, how good they were going to be at shooting the basketball. And frankly, he just said, honestly, that the team is much better at shooting than I expected at this point in time. So that is good to hear. And then the last takeaway, Mike Rhoades is getting the best out of his players already, okay? You have guys from the transfer portal, from VCU, from UNC, from Temple, from Penn State. You have so many different parts, so many elements of chemistry that now all have to fit together, and they are responding to you right away. That is important. They are responding to you immediately. There's no distance. There's no barriers. There are no walls. Everyone seems like they're getting along. And let's take Demetrius Lilley, for example. Coach Rhoades was upfront with him and said, if you don't come back to camp in the best shape of your life, you're not going to play all that much. And guess what? Demetrius Lilley is back in camp. This is a story from Coach Rhoades. Listen to the press conference. It's up on the Locked On Nittany Lions YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Lilley came back in the best shape of his life, and it was for his own benefit. He wanted to play. He was inspired by Coach Rhoades, and that's just one example, but it's important to see that someone who has all these different players from all these different institutions, different basketball backgrounds, are coming together now under one Penn State program. Locked On Nittany Lions. Let's flip over to the final segment where we talk to Zane Bransfield. And let's welcome back Zane Bransfield, a special guest on this Locked On Nittany Lions podcast. Zane, thanks for the time. Now, the question is going to be, no one cares about all of this unless Penn State can actually legitimately win basketball games. And frankly, I think they can in 2023, 2024, but it's a matter of how good they can be. I know that you look at preliminary standings and everyone's just guessing, but they think that Penn State's going to finish in last when it comes to this upcoming season. I don't think so. I think this is a team that can be top 10 in the Big Ten again. And that's, top 10 in a team, in a group of 14 teams. That gets you to the NCAA tournament. So if Penn State can figure it all out in terms of chemistry, that's going to be the biggest obstacle. I've already addressed that. This team doesn't have any weaknesses, but how good can they be in your mind, and why can they be that good? You saw it at practice.
I think there's a bunch of reasons why they can be pretty good. First of all, they have a lot bigger size. They're a lot bigger than last year's team, considering if you look at like Kebajai, who started at center last year, he was a pretty scrawny guy, which it's not a knock on him. It's just how it was. Mm-hmm. And you look at this coming season, you got guys like Wahab and Aire, and they're just big guys. And even Demetrius Lilley looks like an absolute stud now. So we got big presence in the paint. Plus, the team has a lot of shooters. So that's like a big thing. Like Micah Shrewsbury ran a very strict 3-point shooting team. And Mike Rhoades wants to be a little bit more physical, which is fine. But I think we've got some shooters, and I think we'll have a couple of 3-pointers and still maybe lead the Big Ten in threes.
Yeah, I think that, and when you look at the 3-point shooting, or you look at the guys that can do it, it's not Andrew Funk and Seth Lundy, and then Miles Dredd. He had a cold stretch there through a good chunk of the season, but everyone game planned for Andrew Funk and Seth Lundy because they were the best in the country. But now you're getting Puff Johnson, who can do it. Zach Hicks, that's the name of his game. That's what he wants to do. We talked to Nick Kern in the media availability, and he said, well, I'm going to shoot the 3-point shot a lot more this upcoming season. Ace Baldwin can do it. Let's see if Kanye Clary can do it. Now we'll reserve Wahab, Aire, and Lilley. We'll say that they're going to stay pretty close to the paint. They're not going to take the outside shot, but I named about 4 or 5 different guys there that can all shoot the 3. RayQuawndis Mitchell falls in that category as well. How much of a role is Bragi Goodmanson going to have? We'll see, because he is a true freshman, but he did play pro basketball. I know it's not the NBA. Don't roast me in the comments, everyone. I know it wasn't the NBA, but he was playing basketball, pro basketball in Iceland against grown men. So he knows what it takes. He has the discipline. And frankly, just watching him in practice, he has a pretty slick shot.
Well, and besides just shooting too, a lot of those guys are super shifty, and just having those quick handles and being able to maneuver, where we were watching them playing 5-on-5 at practice. And a lot of those guys were going straight through contact, and they got big guys like Lilley and Wahab and Aire like slamming them against, and they're still making these like jelly rolls and stuff. And they're just doing great.
What do you think the chemistry is going to be like? Because I think, like I said, that's going to be the biggest challenge, obstacle that they have. You have guys coming over from Micah Shrewsbury's group, VCU, Temple, Iceland, for crying out loud, people, Iceland. So there's a lot of different basketball backgrounds, and it's going to be difficult to marry them all as quickly. I know there's so much turnover because of the transfer portal, but the Big Ten stays relatively the same. I think that teams are going to go through an identity shift. Like, let's take Michigan, for example, losing Hunter Dickinson, but Purdue retains a lot of it, most primarily Zach Edey, but they get that starting backcourt back from a season ago. So Penn State is going a little bit of a facelift here. The chemistry, I think they're going to be slow to start. I think it's going to be slow, but by the time mid to late January rolls around, I think that's when the team's going to take that next step, and we'll start putting a streak together in Big Ten play.
Well, like you said, the chemistry is going to be a factor, but I think Mike Rhoades has it under control, because he said like he sees a lot of guys after practice going, they getting dinner together, just hanging out, whatever that may look like. And now, like you said, only 5 guys are returning from Shrewsbury's squad, and Claire was the only guy that really got meaningful minutes. But Ace and Nick play together, and a couple of the other guys, like, they got similar game styles that like allowed them to like fluctuate and figure out how they fit in Coach Rhoades' system. And I think they're going to be okay. You think they're going to have a little bit of a slow start, which I think is reasonable to like assume that, but I think because they go off here to the Bahamas in about like less than a month. And I think that'll be like the real test to see, can they all form together? Can they take that next level and really gel together and be the Penn State team that we hope they can be, and the team that was last year, the way they had that chemistry?
For you, is this a top 10 team? I see them as in the Big Ten, right? Is this a team that has the potential to make the NCAA tournament? I don't think they're that far off. If they can because they don't have any weaknesses. They got to figure out what those strengths are, but they don't have anything that they're really bad at. We knew that Penn State was going to be a very small team a season ago. We knew that they were going to struggle a little bit defensively. I like this team a lot because they don't have any glaring weaknesses. So I put them in the top 10 of the Big Ten. It's going to be around that 8, 9, or 10 spot. They're not going to be in the top 5, but I think Mike Rhoades is the right coach for this group. They've built this team to be good in the short term, competitive in the short term, and they're set up very nicely for the long term. But everyone cares more about the 23-24 season. Is this a team that can hang around and be involved in the NCAA tournament, Zane?
I think we definitely can make the tournament, and more importantly, I think we can win a Big Ten championship, because that's what people want to see. They just want to see a championship, whether that's NCAA or Big Ten. They want to see a new trophy. And just talking with Nick Kern and Ace Baldwin, and they both think this is the year. They think they got the group, think they got the weapons, and they can go out there, bring home a championship to Happy Valley.
Zane, I appreciate the perspective, and it was important to see all of this in person. And the season's not too far away. I know football's the primary sport right now. Basketball, November, and like you said, the Bahamas trip is coming up very fast. So keep your schedules marked, folks. Your calendars circled for those dates. And Zane, can't wait to have you back on again to discuss not only basketball but football as well.
Thank you, Zach.
And if you like this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, please like it, share it with your friends and family, comment any feedback about what you think Penn State men's basketball is going to do, not only this upcoming season, but long-term with Mike Rhoades at the helm. And if you like everything that we do here at Locked On Nittany Lions, keep following along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.